On November 17th, a Chinese cargo ship named Peng 3 dropped its anchor in Swedish waters around 9 a.m. and then passed over undersea cables located in the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Lithuania. Shortly afterward, the cables were extensively damaged. The next day, in the early hours of November 18th, the Peng 3 passed over undersea cables between Germany and Finland, and those cables were also damaged by the anchor. Hi everyone, this is Stan, your favorite Polish Taiwan YouTuber. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to today's show. We've been following China and Russia increasingly coordinating operations across various areas these years. Their cooperation exceeds direct military and economic support during active conflicts, such as Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine or China harassing Taiwan and other neighboring nations. But operations in gray areas are also emerging. On November 17th, a Chinese cargo ship named Peng 3 dropped its anchor in Swedish waters around 9 a.m. and then passed over undersea cables located in the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Lithuania. Shortly afterward, the cables were extensively damaged. The next day, in the early hours of November 18th, the Peng 3 passed over undersea cables between Germany and Finland, and those cables were also damaged by the anchor. During this incident, the Peng 3 suspiciously turned off its automatic identification system, AIS, reduced its speed, and moved in irregular patterns at sea. And just within 24 hours, all the undersea cables that the Peng 3 passed over were mysteriously cut. This incident had an impact in many European countries like Germany, Sweden, Lithuania, and Denmark. Moreover, it's not the first time Chinese cargo ships have been suspected of sabotage. In October 2023, the Chinese cargo ship New Arctic Bear was also suspected of damaging undersea gas pipelines and communication cables between Finland and Estonia. Elizabeth Braw, a national security expert at the American Enterprise Institute, AEI, highlighted in an op-ed she published in Foreign Policy on February 21, 2023, that while damage to undersea cables is not uncommon, the consecutive severing of two cables is unlikely to be a mere coincidence. Her article primarily discussed the issue of undersea cables between Taiwan and the Matsu Islands that are being frequently and accidentally cut by the Chinese dredging vessels. According to a report by the International Cable Protection Committee, ICPC, there are 100 to 200 cases of cable damage globally each year, of which only 50 to 100 are related to fishing vessels, with the rest caused by engineering activities or other factors. In other words, the frequency of undersea cable damage incidents linking Matsu Islands that belong to Taiwan is abnormally high. Following this incident, numerous investigation reports were released. According to an analysis provided by Kepler, a maritime data analytics company, to the Wall Street Journal, the weather on the day in question was calm, and waves were relatively low, making the likelihood of an anchor being accidentally dragged very slim. Moreover, the locations of the world's 380 undersea cables, along with detailed maps indicating their precise positions, were originally published with good intentions to help fishing vessels avoid them during operations. However, these maps have ended up being maliciously exploited by China and Russia. When the incident involving the severing of two undersea cables erupted, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, who was attending an EU defense ministers' meeting in Brussels, Belgium, stated in an interview that the damage to the two cables in the Baltic Sea was a sabotage. He added that no one believes that these cables were accidentally cut. He also described the incident as a part of a hybrid warfare operation targeting Europe, pointing to a coordinated gray zone operations by Russia and China aimed at harassing democratic nations in Europe. Therefore, we can also understand that the frequent severing of undersea cables in Taiwan Strait by China is not just an act of gray zone warfare. It can also be considered a routine military drill aimed at cutting off Taiwan's external communications in case of a war between the two countries. Additionally, severing cables is very easy, but repairing them is extremely costly and time-consuming. According to the report by the Taiwanese news agency CNA, the cost of international submarine cable repairs is calculated on a daily basis, with a single repair costing about 10 to 20 million new Taiwan dollars, which is 307 to 615,000 US dollars. Currently, there are only about 60 specialized ships worldwide that are laying submarine cables. Of these, only 8 are less than 18 years old. while the rest are 20 to 30 years old. These cable-laying ships are all owned by private companies, and there is little interest in improving the situation in the free market. This is mainly because damage to underwater cables is unpredictable. Moreover, to avoid accidental damage, new cables in the future will have to be buried deeper, about 2 meters below the seabed. However, these deeper buried cables will still rely on the same 60 ships for installation, creating significant opportunities for vessels like Peng 3. In fact, as early as 2011, the CCP had already developed a very cost-effective technology for severing cables, and even applied for patents for this technology. Su Zuyun, director of the Institute for Strategic and Resource Studies at the Taiwan National Defense and Security Research Institute, also mentioned that cable cutting technology is used during submarine cable upgrades, such as when retrieving cables from the seabed, which first requires cutting them. However, if this technology is maliciously exploited by the CCP, it can be used for sabotage. He stated, "The CCP regards similar acts of cable sabotage as an unpublicized military option. The CCP has always leveraged these gray areas, turning technologies that appear to be commercial into military applications, which they refer to as civil-military integration." In 2021, I made a video explaining that every time the CCP engages in illegal activities at sea, they always do one thing: they turn off the automatic identification system AIS on their ships. Normally, the AIS system provides maritime radar data to prevent maritime traffic accidents and collisions. This is also a requirement under the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, or SOLAS. However, when Chinese fishermen engage in illegal fishing, such as near the waters of Argentina or South Africa, they turn off the AIS system on their ships as they approach restricted fishing areas. This allows them to overfish in that area without being tracked. In fact, in 2016, the Argentine Coast Guard even sank a Chinese fishing vessel that was engaged in illegal fishing. And it's not only fishing industry. When Chinese vessels are involved in illegal shipping of Iranian oil, they also turn their AIS off. This allows them to bypass international sanctions, maintaining a facade of neutrality, while secretly providing financial support to sanctioned countries. This practice had already been ongoing for several years before Russia invaded Ukraine and the Israel-Gaza conflict erupted. This is also one of the reasons why Iran becomes wealthier the more sanctions are imposed on it. Additionally, the Chinese militia vessels in the South China Sea often turn off their AIS systems as